Okay, this video is going to be about terminal shells. Okay, so we've been working with Linux and the command line, and I need to open up a terminal window. Okay, in Mac OS, they use similar terminal shells. It's Unix, which is very, very similar to Linux. Unix is proprietary, and Linux was created and it's open source. But the commands and the shells behave very similarly. Alright, so when we open up a terminal command, and if you're using Windows, you can use cygwin, and that is a Linux-style terminal emulator for Windows. And so anything you run inside of cygwin behaves just like it was a Linux machine. Okay, so it's nice that in that way we have a command line, a set of command line tools that works across all of the major platforms. Okay, so we open up a terminal, and I want to see what shell I'm using. Okay, so we've learned about the echo command. Echo prints anything you type to standard output. Okay, so it print out hello to standard output, and the standard output of this command by default in the terminal gets printed out. Okay, so echo can also print out system variables. Okay, I can print out my user. System variables are usually all capitalized, so my user on this system is Luke. And if I want to print out what shell I'm using, this is the shell that I have configured. Okay, so I'm using Z shell. Future versions of Mac OS are going to be shipping with Z shell. The most commonly used shell, probably across all Linux distributions, is probably Bash. An older version of a shell we're going to be talking about is TC shell, and that was one of the earlier shells. Bash has kind of since taken over, and because of licensing, Mac OS is going to be moving to Z shell. So just for consistency purposes, I would recommend everybody change their shell to Z shell. So what is a shell? A shell is what interprets the commands that you type. Okay, so there's different ways you can create a command. Pretty much in every single shell, you type the command name, you add a space, and any information you type after the space is considered an argument. And you can have multiple arguments. Okay, so echo, whatever arguments you supply, it just prints them back out. Alright, but there are additional things that a shell can do when we redirect output to a file. So let me change directories to my desktop. I can redirect the output of the hello command, which that goes to standard output. If I use the greater than symbol, it redirects to a file. And I'm going to call this hello.txt. Okay, so this character has to be interpreted by something. How does the command line know that this character means I want to take the output from this command and put it into this file? That has to do with the shell that you're using and how all these different characters work together. Alright, so the shell interprets your commands and then executes them. The shell is what talks directly to the computer system. So you type in commands for the shell to handle, and then the shell executes them. Alright, so I can look, we see the file was created, hello.txt. I can look inside with the cat command, hello. Alright, so if I want to see what my default shell is, so we'll open another terminal and log into the CS server. Over here, this first terminal I opened is my local machine, and we saw that I have my shell set to Z shell. So if I log into the CS server, so this is a student style account. Okay, so this should be very similar to your accounts. Type in my password. Okay, we see the command prompt is slightly different. Here's my username. CS is the host, and then this is the directory I'm currently working in. /u1/class CS15100. So that's my home directory. Print working directory. All right. If I want to see what shell I have on this system, echo, and use the system variable, that's the $sign, and then the name of the system variable, shell. Okay, so on this system, my default shell is TCSH, TC shell. All right, now we can change these shells, but I want to show you where that's located, where this information, the default shell, is located. In the file system, / is the root directory, and etc is a directory inside of that that contains configuration information for multiple system level programs. Okay, one of the core systems in a Linux machine is managing users. Right, so there is a password file, PASSWD, and if we look inside of that, these are all the different users on our system. Okay, where there's this X here, that used to be where the password is saved, but we've moved that to a separate file, so that way when people look at the password file, they don't see everybody's hash passwords. Alright, so there's a lot of information in this file. The first item is the username. We can use the grep command to just filter everything out by user. So we want to look at the CS151 users. Okay, this is a large machine with lots of users, so we want to filter that out. Now we're just looking at the CS151 users. Let's clear the screen a couple times so it's a little bit easier to see what's going on. So there, I'm printing out the contents of the password file, and I'm grepping through that. That's filtering. Basically, I'm only printing the results of this, each line that has CS151 in that line. Okay, so I'm filtering my results. So now we scroll up and we have a much shorter list of users. Okay, so the user information here is the username. This is the user number, user ID. This is the finger information that the user has put in, so this is their real name. And then here is their home directory, and here is their default shell. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the differences between these shells and also show you how to change your shell. All right, so in TC shell, if I wanted to create a variable, system and environment variable, we know we have variables like this, user. I always like to put quotes around things just as a good habit. Alright, so this is my user on this machine is CS151. So most system variables are all capital letters. Alright, I can create my own variables though. So if I type env, that shows me all of my environment variables. Notice these are almost all in capital letters. Okay, there's my username, log name, my home. Okay. Over here, I can create, so this terminal window is the CS server, and remember this is TC shell. Echo, what's our shell? So this is TC shell. This is an older shell. I can change this shell, but first I'm going to show you some of the differences between Bash and ZSH and the TC shell. If I want to create a variable that I want to use later, so I want to say I have a variable and I want to just call it foo. If I set env, what's the name of my variable, foo, and I want the value to be stored in there, I am foo. Now if I use the echo command, I can print out the contents of that variable I just created. I am foo. So you have to use the command set env and then the name of the variable and then the value you want to be stored in that variable. Alright, now over here on this machine I am using I'm using the shell Z shell. Right, so we can check that and I can say what's my shell. Okay, I'm using Z shell, ZSH. Alright, now to create variables on Z shell and Bash, which is the much more common shell, we can say the variable name and then an equal sign and then what do I want to be contained in that variable. Here I say I am foo. Echo foo. Alright, so these two terminal shells, they execute commands very similar, but there are differences. There are subtle differences, and this is more of a major difference between TC shell and another shell like bash, which stands for born again shell, and Z shell. Z shell and bash both use this style for variables. So Z shell and bash are much more similar. TC shell is kind of the outlier, and it's less common. So I'm going to show everybody how to change their shell to a more common shell. Alright, so the more common shell we're going to be using is Z shell. So we're going to use the command CH for change and SH for shell. Okay, CH, SH, change shell. We add a command line option -S for the name of the shell that we want to change to. Alright, so first we need to know what all shells we can change to. Alright, so to do that, those are all kept in /bin. There's a lot of things in here. Bin is where the system level programs are stored. So we'll look in bin, and we're going to grep anything that has an SH in it. That should be most of the shells. So we have bash, we have CSH, we have TC shell, that's what everyone is using, and then we have Z shell. So there's all of these different shells. These aren't shells, but most of the time the shells, dash is a different shell, C shell, KSH is a shell. Alright, so these are all different, basically interpreters. They interpret the commands you type, and they all have subtle differences. But bash and Z shell are more similar than TC shell is. So we're going to either want to use bash or Z shell would be my recommendation. So these are the files in here that we can use to change our shell to. Alright, all of these shells are also programs that you can execute. So ZSH is Z shell, and I can use ZSH to execute a command. Echo. So here, even though my current shell is using TC shell, I'm saying run Z shell and run this command in that shell, and this is the command. Okay, so everything inside of quotes here was executed inside of Z shell instead of my normal shell that I'm in. Alright, bash, you can do this as well. Alright, so the -C means run this command, and then the following item is the command you want to run. Alright, so I can use the command which to tell me where any of these commands are located. All of the commands in a Linux system are just files, they're programs, but they're located in certain directories that have been labeled as program file directories. And you can change that for your user if you want, but there are some common ones. Alright, /bin stands for binary. That's where a lot of programs live. Okay, if I want to know where a particular program lives, I can say which, and that's which folder, which directory does this command live in. So where is Z shell? So Z shell lives in /bin /ZSH. Where does the bash shell live? It lives in user /bin /bash. Alright, so there are some common directories. Whenever you see a bin folder, that's generally where an assortment of programs are going to be stored. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to change our shell. So CH SH, change shell. What's the name of the shell? So we use -S, that option, and we're going to specify the name of the shell. We want to use ZSH. So we're going to go, the path to this file is /, which is the root directory, bin, and then ZSH. Okay, now we've executed that command and nothing happens. We still have this command prompt. If we say echo shell, it still says TCSH. Okay, so in order to get these changes to take effect, we have to exit and then log back in. Okay, so when I typed exit, now we're back at the command prompt for my local machine, just like this prompt. Okay, I'm back in my local machine, and it says connection to cs.ind state closed. I left that CS server, and now I'm running commands back on my machine. So now I'm going to reconnect to the CS server, cs151.0.0 at cs.indstate.edu. Type in the password. Okay. So this is Z shell configuration. So this is the first time I've logged in and I've started up Z shell. So you are seeing this message because you have no ZSH startup files. Okay. So there are some files that run initially a lot of times when you have Z shell. What you want to do is we don't have any of these files, so you can make them, or you can just quit and do nothing. We can exit creating the file, home directory, zshrc, and you can put different variables and different settings in this file that will run every time you log in. Okay, so what we want to do is this one, 0. We want option 0. It's going to create this file for us. So we say ls-al. Now we have .zshrc. Okay. Every time we log in, .zsh, that's our shell. RC stands for run command. Okay, so this file gets executed every time we log in. So any commands in this file will run. All right, let's look at that file. And it starts with a dot, so remember that's a hidden file. Okay, so this file just contains one comment, and it's created by new user. All right, so what we can do is we can edit this file using nano.zshrc, and I can add in hello user. And every time I log into the system, hello user will be print to my terminal now. So if I hit Control O to save in Nano, it means write out to disk. So that little caret means Control and then O. Write out to disk or save. I want to save the file. Control X exits. Now if I look and see what's in the file, I'm using the cat command again. We have this echo command. Alright, so let's exit. So I'm exiting the connection from the CS server, and I'm going to log in again. Alright, now I am back at my local machine. Okay, I'm going to try to connect to the CS server again, and we're going to see if our message prints out. Okay, so SSH cs151.0.0 at cs.indstate.edu. Okay, so this stuff is printed out. That's configured elsewhere in the system, but we see after that stuff prints out, our ZSH RC file, the RC stands for run commands. When we first log in, these commands get run. And it said echo, hello, and then the username. So this is my username. So any commands you put in this file, .zshrc, get executed when you log in. And now we can see what shell am I running? I'm running Z shell. Okay, so that's how you change your shells. Right? And we see the command prompt is only slightly different. It still says your username and then at the host name, which is CS, and then instead of printing out the entire home directory, it uses the shortcut tilde. Right? So we've successfully converted our shell over to Z shell. I'm going to have everyone do that as part of the next lab. But the main takeaways here are there are different shells and they all have slight differences. And Bash and Z shell are the most commonly used shells, and Z shell is probably the up-and-coming shell specifically because Macintosh is switching over to it in all of its upcoming releases. So I would recommend everyone get most familiar with Z shell. All right? So that's how you change your shells.